Patch 4.0 just went live yesterday, and a lot of people are wondering how drastic were the nerfs, quote unquote, that hit Space Marine 2. Is this game unplayable? What's the situation? Well, in this video, I'm going to break a lot of that down. This is pretty much an op-ed piece. I'm just going to be talking about my opinions of lethal difficulty after having streamed it and played it quite a bit. But one of the things, and why we're looking at this picture first here, is I think people have a misconstrued perception of what these nerfs are. In my typical fashion about funding the knowledge, the three big things I want to cover that people I think have an idea or they think that are nerfs are not actual nerfs. For example here, melee archetypes. Fencing weapons perfect parry window will now have the same duration as balanced weapons, but it will start from the first frame of parry animation. This is not a nerf. What this means is that you can wait until the very last second, then press the parry button and actually get the parry off. Versus prior to this patch, your character had to initiate the parry animation before they would actually parry. This now actually makes perfect parry and fencing weapons far more effective than balanced. This is not a nerf. This is in fact, if anything, a buff, and it makes the gameplay a lot tighter. You can now play like you're playing Dark Souls versus before you had to actually initiate the parry animation to actually get anything. Basic Auspex scan, bonus damage on bosses is reduced by 30%. So something to consider. First, the basic Auspex scan is a 50% damage buff. A 30% reduction on 50% is 35 total percent. What this is saying is that the damage of Auspex scan, the buff of it, is now not 50, it's 35%. Just basic Auspex scan. Tactical's bonuses to this via perks is a total of 170%. So in a post 4.0 patch world, your Auspex scan will still do 205% additional damage to bosses. What is a boss? Boss is anything that is a Terminus style of unit. So in fact, I thought it was just Terminus, but I've been corrected recently. Bosses and Terminus are the same thing. So the Hive Tyrant and the Helldrake are both Terminus units just as much as the Carnifex and Neurothrope, as well as Hellbrute, are all bosses. So it's 15% overall reduction in damage on the Auspex scan. It's a much needed quote unquote nerf, and it only applies solely to Terminus units. Lastly is the Melta charge. This only applies to the Melta bomb that you actually place, and again, only to bosses. The 70% is still pretty drastic of a nerf, but regardless, it's not really much of anything. If you think of these two alone, without even looking at the perfect parry window thing, this is such a small amount of total gameplay that you'll actually be encountering that is not even a substantial nerf. But another thing, though, I think people are looking at are these things right here. Ammo crates have limited refills per player. You'll never, the crate itself, you get like 3 accesses per player. So they're plenty, and it's per ammo crate. So you'll never run out of it. Like I've not playing lethal difficulty where ammo is already scarce. We've not encountered a time where we're completely out of the ammo crate. Also, the player armor reduction of 20 and 10% is completely like you just don't really feel it. If you're not good enough for ruthless or lethal, the 20% is not going to be the thing that tips you over. The game just throws so much crap at you on the lethal difficulty that it's ridiculous in a fun way. Lastly, though, is armor restores from finishers only if you stay close to your battle brothers. This is the big thing, the coherency thing that people are talking about. This really, I think as a game feature, it's great. It just needs to have its range increased by 2x or 3x, because anyone who's playing a melee class, they can't really feel effective as that class because they do have to stay somewhat tethered. The fact that you need to hold hands and be on top of each other is blown out of proportion. You can still stay pretty much like really pretty far away and get this cohesion, and it's not an on or an off. You can see this thing draining, so you have an idea of how close you have to be. The big problem though with this is I think it's a bug, and I hope it's hot fixed. The 3 big problems with this is A, if you have a perk that gives you armor from a gun strike, even though you haven't killed something, so Assault has this perk, the perk will not activate if you're not in cohesion. That shouldn't be. That is I think a bug. Also, if you're the last one standing, you do not get cohesion, period. I think that's got to be a bug, because then also if you're playing solo with bots are terrible at cohesion. So you can't replenish armor for doing finishers in all 3 of those instances. So I think those are bugs that's easily hot fixed away. And I think once cohesion gets double, if not triple, its aura, it'll be a totally fine mechanic. I think a lot of people are really blowing this patch out of proportion. And I'm going to explain more after having played a lot of lethal difficulty. I think lethal difficulty is very challenging, but I think it's also really exciting and a lot of fun. So that's my opinion. That's my quick hot take on things. This is about 5.5 minutes. I have a whole bunch more of content talking more about this, but if that's all you wanted to know, please feel free to shut the video down and get back to enjoying your day. I don't want to hold the video ransom. I just wanted to get down and dirty into the real nuts and bolts of this thing and give you my quick opinion before backing it all up with my, I guess, quote unquote concrete details. If you are heading out, please don't forget to like, comment, or subscribe. Each one of those things does help me out in a huge way. But let's get started here on, is lethal difficulty too hard in Space Marine 2? Okay, so diving in here, I think a lot of people have this misconstrued idea of what this patch has done. They said tactical is nerfed, everything is nerfed, things aren't fun anymore, and that is so far from the case. What we saw with the patch is that 10 and 20% armor has been reduced for substantial and ruthless, which stands to reason that has also been reduced for lethal, probably 20% or higher. Having played tons of lethal, I can tell you that it doesn't feel like that 20% is super punishing. Lethal now allows you to have multiple extremists on the field at the same time. That is extremely fun. I like the difficulty increase that lethal delivers to us. I don't think that lethal should be accessible to every single player, especially now that lethal is not the only difficulty where you can get the relic tier armory data. The other thing that will happen with this patch is that we got the change to ammo cache and its availability. It's now limited. It's limited, but it does not feel punishing. It's like 3 uses per player. It's huge. If you look at the actual ammo cache, you'll see a physical representation of those uses depleting as you use them. You're going to be just fine. Just go ahead and play through it. Now, I understand a lot of what I'm saying is colored by the perception that I'm playing with reliable teammates, either on comms or in some sort of atmosphere where they are decently to good players, right? Decent to good players. So I understand that playing with randos, it's going to change your perspective of all this. And I'm absolutely sympathetic to that. I get it. But I think as it stands, a lot of people have said that lethal is too punishing. I want it to be that way. I want to get better at the game. And people have said, hey, I don't want the enemy. I want the enemy's damage to be nerfed or their health or so on and so forth. I don't want enemies to be damage sponges. I want them to feel like I have to get better to beat them. And what they've done here is reduce ammo or they've increased ammo scarcity and reduced your armor by that percentage point. That, in my opinion, makes it so that you have to get better to actually play in those higher levels. And I'm really very much not a get good gamer. I don't think that that's a very good axiom to apply to games as a whole. I think that some games should have applicable difficulty and some, maybe you just don't ever play them. And I think that that's just fine. Especially now, like I said, that lethal is on its own difficulty away from relic, right? Relic you can get if you just simply go ahead and play ruthless now. And I think that playing that way keeps people invested in a top portion of the game. If you really want to play the hardest difficulty, it's going to require you to maybe get on comms. It's going to require you to play a lot tighter. It's going to require you to know what you're doing a lot more. You can't just simply rely on all these other things. Which also brings me to a point. Fencing, they talked about a kind of change in the way its parry window works. It's not like you wouldn't notice it at all. No one has said anything about it actually being a true nerf. It looks on paper like it would be a nerf, but it truly is nothing different. You will play 100% the same if you're playing with a fencing weapon. You're not going to be like, oh man, this timed out differently for me. In fact, if anything, I feel like the parry window is tighter for me, and I'm actually hitting it better with my fencing weapons. Just don't make the mistake I did and use a fucking block weapon thinking, what the hell's wrong with all my parries? I was an idiot. But ultimately, I think the game just got put into a much better place as far as experiencing a lot better and more challenging of a horde experience. Because Ruthless was getting to a point where I just really didn't have to try that hard. And people can make the claim, well, it's easy for you to say, guy, you play video games for a living. I know I do play video games for a living, but I am not very good at the video games that I play. I'm far better at describing and explaining and educating than I am in actuality. Most of the people I play with are way better than me, and they carry me through a lot of my content. I'm not going to lie. I play with my friend Smog and my friend Indie Pride from Milk and Cookie Total War. They're so much better than me, and I am held up by their greatness. I think that with this patch, I would like to see a hotfix tomorrow or the day after that changes the way squad coherency works. Because squad coherency is the biggest issue that I think people have seen. When you're playing with friends, I don't find it really to be an issue, right? But that's not the case for most people. Most people are going to be playing this with randos that they're queuing up with. And when you're playing with randos, maintaining that squad coherency is going to be a big challenge. And I think that squad coherency is a cool addition, but what's hindering it is the fact that, like I said in the intro, if you've got the assault perk that will give you armor whenever you don't kill someone with a gun strike, it doesn't work if you're outside of a coherency. And if you are playing solo, the bots are terrible at maintaining coherency. And if you are the last man standing, you don't have coherency. So those three elements don't feel like a good challenge. They feel like a broken thing. They feel like this is a bug, this needs to be fixed. Simply hotfix it away, and boom. I think coherency will feel better. Now, I think coherency does need an increase in its range because Assault, Vanguard, and Bulwark can't play the way that they were really meant to play, which is a little bit more up in the face of things, diving into things, really getting up in that cookie jar. I think that coherency should exist, as someone in chat, Dr. Detroit, just said, as I'm live streaming this reaction video right now. I think it should exist. It's in tabletop, and I think that it's a cool way to kind of keep the squad together, because too often people play a lot of shooters, Helldivers, Destiny, Call of Duty, Battlefield, Space Marine 2, with Call of Duty blinders on, where I am the best player ever to have existed. I alone will save the team, and they die. And now the team is one man short, and it's now going to be harder for them to win. I think that by forcing team play onto a squad of randos, I think it's a good thing. And it only exists in lethal difficulty. We have to remember that point that I forgot to bring up in the intro, which I should have brought up. It only exists in lethal difficulty. All of the perceived nerfs in this have only come from very small portions of the game. Tactical needed a nerf to its Auspex because it was just deleting bosses way too fast on all difficulties. And now it only applies a very small nerf to only bosses, only on the base scan. The buff from the perks still exists. It still exists just fine. So I think that a lot of these quote unquote nerfs are not actually nerfs. And I think that the new difficulty is awesome. And I think it should not be accessible to every single player. Again, I'm not someone who is a big get good type of player, but I think if like for example, I couldn't play Halo on Legendary when I was coming up on the early sticks, you know? And that's okay. I had to get better, and then I could play Legendary. I remember the fun times of playing co-op Legendary Halo and suffering through it. And finally we got good enough that we were able to kind of do it in our sleep. And that is like a mark where you feel like you actually have a bit of accomplishment. I get it, that not all of us have the time to play these games through rampant hours at a time. That's why there's other difficulties that exist for you. And the fact, again, like I've said before, that you're not relegated to solely playing lethal to get relic armory data, you're totally fine now. So you simply play as much as you can of, what's it called? Artificer, and you get Artificer to max out. And then as soon as you can actually jump into a relic, you try to get you just do whatever you can to try to get that mission done. And yeah, you're going to fail more than you're going to succeed, but eventually you'll succeed, and then you'll succeed more, and you'll fail less. That's how skill sets work. You build them over time, and you get a sense of accomplishment, and you can achieve it. Some of us are married. You got 2 or 3 hours that you can play in a given week. I get it. But I think that to poo-poo the hardest difficulty, which has a really buggy mechanic with coherency, when you're not even playing it, is not necessarily the best approach here. And I think that the devs can definitely make coherency play a lot better and feel a lot better with a simple hotfix of enabling people to actually use their perks in the way their classes are meant to be played. But I think across the board, this was a very positive step for the game. Whereas before, with patch 3.0, it was great because now I could actually play the chaos operations and have fun. But now, after playing it for so long, I'm like, shit, Ruthless just doesn't feel fun. And they even said in the patch notes, hey, we wanted Ruthless to be more accessible, but we made it too easy. And something like 16% of players have beaten Ruthless on Steam. So there's that to kind of consider here, right? But I think overall, what's been done is a step that I like. And it's a personal opinion. This is me using my platform to give you my opinion of what I enjoy about the game. And if you don't like it, that's totally fine. You spent money on a game. It's your prerogative not to like certain things. But be realistic with yourself and ask, do I not like it because I can't do it? Or do I not like it because it's stupid? And that's fine if you don't like it because it's dumb, right? Like, I don't like the squad coherency thing. It doesn't make much sense. I want to be able to split up and cover as a heavy from a further distance back, and squad coherency tethers me too close to the squad. That's a totally valid statement, and I completely understand. But I think realistically, lethal is a direction that we needed difficulty-wise, and I'm really excited to see how this pans out with future additions to the game, more operations, hopefully future additions to the difficulties in the game, maybe different weapon tiers, whatever the situation is. I really, really like it. So go ahead and let me know in the comment section below. Are you enjoying lethal? Do you think it's too hard? Do you think it's too easy? And also consider, this is day one. What will lethal really be like in a week when people have really learned to be more adaptive to 2 or 3 extremists on the map? Getting jumped by 3 lictors or 3 raveners at a time is so fucking fun. It makes your butt tight in a way that you didn't think would happen playing a video game. And I don't know where I'm going with that, but my point remains is that playing those like high octane moments of like, I didn't focus up, I died. That's not a bad thing. Having that is great. But again, I come from a world like Vermintide or Darktide, where if you're not focusing on those highest difficulties, you are just going to get nothing but punished. So really excited to see how this kind of plays out for people, especially as they kind of get adapted to the game. And a lot of people too, one person in chat just said, why add lethal while also nerfing Ruthless? Just add lethal. No, I think that this was a good step because Ruthless didn't feel scary or intimidating anymore. And I felt like the power curve or the difficulty jump would have been too drastic. If people got good at Ruthless and Ruthless was not that hard anymore, then they jumped to lethal, they'd be frustrated because there was not a gradual power curve to the difficulty. It was like going 1, 2, 3 on a lower level, then spiking up to difficulty 5 and just being, oh, this is out of control. So I think that Ruthless and Substantial getting a little bit of a buff to their relative difficulty by removing player agency and forcing you to play better ultimately makes you and prepares you for lethal better than just simply keeping Ruthless how it was and Substantial how it was and letting you jump into lethal going, I just got dunked on over and over and over. I can't play this. So those are my impressions. That's my opinion. Go ahead and let me know in the comment section below how you feel. If you don't like it, if you do like it, what you do, what you don't, and be constructive about it, right? Say this is the things that I don't like about it. I know that game developers read Reddit posts, they watch videos of some of the content creators that they like, and they take a look at what people say and be constructive about it. Like I said, don't just say, I don't like it, it's dumb, it sucks, I can't beat it. Say, I don't like it because every time I try to play a sniper, I feel punished because it's not the way I would want to play sniper. Talk about the barrier of why you're not having fun, because that's how development works in a lot of these game companies, rather than just saying it's not fun. Okay, well, give me some to go off there. So as always, guys, thank you so much for watching here today. Have a good one and take care.